Uh, so the thought control was pretty aggressive this morning. I woke up inside this, right? My head goes under here, and if you look here, I put a lot of influence, right? But like in this direction, which is like this direction outwards toward the room, I don't have that much protection here. This is probably the least protected area, right? And inside there, on the other side, as you saw, all the paper was moved away, and I had paper there, you know, and it was consistently moved to that side, and that always happens like that. Like the least protected area becomes even less protected area, right? Because if I have protected myself like 95% of all directions, but the least the last 5% is not protected at all, or like very badly protected, it doesn't matter as much. I mean, it still matters. Like the other 95% still matters. Yeah, sure. But a lot less. I mean, they can do a lot of damage with the last 5% if those last 5% are very badly protected, right? And so that's what they constantly try to do, And so I concentrated on blocking the walls that are close so that, uh, I, I, I take the edge off. But, and because, like walls that are further away here, they're not that big of a problem. I mean, ideally, I would cover everything, but I don't have that luxury. So I concentrate on the walls that are close because they can put signal senders right behind that wall, right? Inside that wall. But these walls are so far away that they're not that big of a problem. So that's why I concentrate on this direction here, behind me here. It's way more important. But yeah, I mean, obviously they can still send some signals here, and they can, combine signals from these walls here with signals from the floor going up here. So yeah, that's also a significant threat. Of course, every direction is. I mean, and they can also combine it with, a little bit of, every direction. Um, so when you combine it like that, then you can make a pretty decent signal, even if there's a lot of protection. Uh, so yeah, I mean, all materials protect as well. Like absolutely all material has some obstruction value for signals. But there's a vast difference between dense materials and, you know, uh, not dense materials. So, um, like, for example, aluminum or metals in general, um, and yeah, some other materials that are dense, they provide, pretty decent protection. Um, but then other dense materials also provide some protection, like paper. Paper is probably medium. I'm not a scientist, but that's what I'm guessing from experience and just my own common sense. I mean, obviously, paper isn't as good as aluminum or actually the floor lay the what's that called? like I don't know what underlag is in English, but harmoni golvunderlag, the harmony floor under layer, literally, is how I would translate it literally. It goes under your visible layer of floor, and it provides some protection against um, humidity and a little bit of how to say it's a little springy as well. Like it mitigates the hardness of the floor. So as well, so that's good. And also it creates a little. It mitigates against sound. You know, it dampens the sound as well. So it's expensive, but also it provides pretty decent protection. Actually, better than aluminum. But then again, it is way more expensive, and it's much thicker than aluminum, because aluminum is like, I don't know, minus 0.1 millimeter, or maybe 0. A couple of millimeters, 0.23, I don't know, millimeters, and then the Harmony floor under layer is 2 millimeters, which is way thicker. And it also is way more robust because I can throw it around and it maintains its structural integrity. Not so with aluminum, not in the slightest. If I throw aluminum around, it immediately crumbles and curls and increases and damages itself, you know. So that is a pain when you're dealing with aluminium. That is a constant pain. But yeah, with the floor under layer, you know, you just basically roll it out, cut it, and then put it down, and that's it. You don't have to be like very exact and very careful. You don't have to be, which makes it so much easier. Um, so so it in addition to it being more protective because of its way thicker thickness, and also because of its way more practical structural integrity strength, it's worth the extra dollars, to the extra money, euros, Norwegian crowns, whatever, to buy that. Um, so and it's also broader. It's also actually more than twice the breadth. Is that how I say that? Is that how you say that? Of the aluminum foil. So yeah, it's much more convenient because it's 1 meter, I think, in breadth, and the aluminum foil is the broadest one is 45 centimeters, which is not a lot, so you got to put a lot of those. It would be way more convenient if they had broader ones, like a meter, or maybe even 1.5 a meter. Would be pretty awesome, you know because then I could just like roll quickly, like really quickly roll out 2 of those, and then I would cover all of the floor of a small room, right? That would be really cool. Um, and but yeah, they don't have that. So, but yeah, the Harmony layer is a meter, and that's pretty decent as well. It's more than twice. the breadth. So that's good. But I'm not allowed to have that here. They tried arguing that it damages the building, and like I'm using some kind of foam that would damage the building, but I'm not. I don't know where they got that, other than from their own imagination. Which, why would they look in their imagination about what I'm trying to do here? That makes no sense. That's not science. You need to be scientific in the way you treat people with illnesses. You can't just like make up the stuff that they're doing. It's kind of dishonest and pretty dangerous. If you're making up actions that your forced mental patient is doing, that's pretty serious. But yeah. Anyway, but there's also the fact that we're not supporting your sickness, and that's the most important reason or something. I don't know. Yeah, right. But I'm not doing this because I'm supported. All right. If I was doing this because I was looking for support, then I would be doing something else, because this has put me in a situation where I am so little supported, where I get so little support for what I believe. I have not met one other person who believes I am correct about this. Not one. Which I find pretty crazy, actually. Like, I mean, there should be at least some other people that, if nothing else, they believe what I'm saying because, they're crazy. Or one other person that is smart enough to realize that, oh, actually, you know what? Maybe he's right. But none of those are the case, which I just find so extreme, But, I mean, I'm not doubting that they are messing with other people's emotions and their cognition as well, making it harder for them to believe what I'm saying and understand and judge what I'm saying correctly. I mean, of course they're doing that. I mean, if they're doing this much to me, you can bet your derriere they're doing a lot of adjustment to other people's thinking and feeling as well. An emotion is a very important gauge when you're trying to judge claims. It's not that emotion decides what truth is, but it is that emotion sort of tells you how much sense something is making, right? If you're hearing something and your emotions go, what? Then you're probably going to react like that. Like, what? No, that can't be true. That makes no sense. But if your emotions go, wait a minute, what is going on here? Then, that's what you're going to react with probably. If the emotions kind of match what you think you might truly be reacting with, then yeah, then that might be that, and that's easy to give you that feeling. I mean, if you don't have a really strong mind and intellect, then you're very prone to that sort of manipulation. So, I mean, the weakest minds are the most prone to manipulation. And yeah. So, and if you're like, well, that's an insult. I'm myself. I'm not. No one's messing with my thinking. I am thinking very self-sufficient, autonomously. Mr. Fight Evil. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure it feels that way. And it's not an insult that I'm saying this, right? I'm just trying to say, as far as I can understand, that's probably like very, very probably what they're doing. I'm sure of it because people's reactions and believability towards what I'm saying is very different from a couple of years ago. Very, very different. You know, like a couple of years ago, they would be way more easily believing what I was putting down. And so my stalkers had to be way more careful in certain situations. And importantly, I have been way more direct and good at pointing it out and honest about it. And when I am that, then they need to be more careful. But it's like they have ramped up their manipulation of other people, um, cognitively, mentally, and so it kind of evened out in the end. So that when I was more, sharply criticizing and pointing it out, and more honestly pointing it out, then other people were more so like yeah, no, that's not happening, right? They were more like that, you know. But and I could see that because it goes in it comes and goes. How do you say that? There were certain moments that I can remember, like, oh, that was all it took for me to create some small agreement that something weird was going on, right? And then it's like they pulled back a lot, you know. And then like later, the exact same thing happens, which should logically create the same amount of suspicion or even more suspicion, at least the same amount, and definitely more because it's happened before. Uh, but the opposite is the case. And so, I'm reasoning that, okay, they have then increased their manipulation of other people's ability to think critically. And that's really scary and dangerous. And I know I can't tell people that, really, because if I do, it's like, oh, well, he's really crazy. He thinks they're messing with everyone's thoughts? Of course not. That's preposterous. And I don't feel like they're manipulating me. No, of course you don't. You wouldn't, right? They don't want to they're not retarded, right? They're not really they are stupid, but they're not really stupid, right? They can think about normal, you know, factors. They like not they're actually not trying to get caught, and when you're not trying to get caught, then you will try the opposite, right? You're trying to not get caught. you know and when you're trying not to get caught, then you will try to not be too obvious about it. It's as simple as that. They could be obvious about it to other people, but they won't, and they don't need to be, because you don't really feel that much. They can easily manipulate your emotions, and you have no idea or any way of knowing that that's what they're doing. It's not that you can know that. I know that because they're doing it in an extreme to an extreme degree, which I can clearly see makes no sense. And you would be able to as well if they did the same to you, but they're not. Because if they did this to multiple people, that would be the end, right? They can't do that. But I mean, they can do a lot to some other people. I mean, if you're already insane, then who can possibly say that they're doing it to you as well, because I mean, you wouldn't be able to tell, like, neither the person themselves usually, or other people, nor other people would be able to tell the difference between an illness, a mental illness, simply getting worse, or, you know, it actually being something else causing that. That would be impossible to know. So people would just automatically assume that, okay, yeah, their mental illness has simply gotten worse lately, and that's all there is to that. um, and all of this is pretty scary, because it's like it's so easy for them, right? Yeah, you just need to be a little bit laid back, and manipulate people's thoughts and feelings towards being less critical, and that's all you need to do, and then they will never believe anything. uh, and that sounds ironic, but the fact is, it's not, your critical ability is not only helping you decide what not to believe, it's also helping you to decide what to believe. It goes both ways. um, and so, you know and every time you do not believe something, you tend to believe the opposite. um, Even though people say, well, I just don't have enough evidence to believe. I'm not believing the opposite. I just don't have enough evidence to believe that. Well, that means you believe that it's not the case, right? Usually. I mean, sure, there are some instances where you would be really open to anything, right? You would, like, yeah, could be anything, right? 50% chance, completely neutral. Like, I don't know if there's a God or if there isn't. There absolutely could be, and there absolutely could not be. I'm completely neutral, open, 50-50. Yeah, but that's usually not the way people think. People usually think, I don't think there's a God, or they think, I think there is a God, or they think, I know there is a God, or they think, I know there isn't, right? It's not like, I'm completely neutral on that part. I just don't have sufficient evidence to believe, but I also don't have sufficient evidence to not believe, or to believe there isn't. So I'm completely neutral and objective. No, you're not, usually. You know, I'm sure it happens that people are completely neutral, but it usually isn't how the mind works, right? And if you don't have any evidence to believe something, you usually believe the opposite, right? Unless you see it as likely that something is the case, you usually see it as likely that something isn't the case. It just annoys me the way atheists, a lot of skeptics, they insist on, their neutrality, their utter neutrality in the God question, and other questions as well. I don't believe that for a second. Like, maybe 1% of the cases you're completely neutral. The other 99%, you are not completely neutral. You might be close. You might be, open to both alternatives. Sure, absolutely. But you will usually lean in the one direction or the other, right? That was a lot, but I think, and when if people were completely neutral to the fact that I might have stalkers and might be mind controlled, then they would be way more careful than they are, right? Because now it's like, yeah, probably not. Lock them up, that's fine. They're fine with locking me up. But if people were truly neutral to whether I was, being stalked and stuff, they wouldn't be acting like this, because that would mean there might be danger. If there's like a 50-50 chance of there being a danger, then there definitely might be danger. And so, like, if there's a 50% chance you will die if you go into the red door, then you will not go into the red door, right? Because that is just too high. Unless the other doors have an even higher percentage of chance of you dying, then you're not going in the red door. You know, if everything else is safe and you have a 50% chance of immediately just completely dying when you go through the red door, then you just won't. You know, you will be careful. That will affect your actions. But apparently, you know, none of what I'm saying is affecting anyone's actions. So it is clear to me that people believe that I am not correct. You know, and especially when they're going to the lengths of using violence to put me into a mental hospital, right? You know, yeah, they didn't literally drag me here, but with force, but there was the threat of doing that, right? And threats are also violence, right? They're everything like they everything they do is backed up by power, right? So yeah, that's violence as well. It's just not okay. And you know, if what I'm saying might be true, then this is a completely insane way to treat me. Right? So it just shows, it tells me that like people are really sure that I am wrong. And that's just not rational in the slightest, right? Because I logically might be right. Just logically. You know, rationally. I just might be right. You don't know that. And so, you know, yeah, whatever.